Okay. Morning, Moshe. Good morning, Naftali. Kids, please come on. Next gen. Hello. Okay, we thank
Good morning. Good
Hashem.
morning. Good
Yeah,
morning.
we
How are
thank
you?
Baruch Hashem. We thank Hashem for the giving us the ability to learn, or at least attempt to try and learn, giving me the ability to attempt to try to teach. We also learning in memory of Zahava Golda Bas Baruch
Baruch
Binyamin,
Binyamin.
right? And Zevi Yonatan, then Nisanyo Zev, Ben Ben. All right, stop it, guys. Also a four Shlema for Gedalia Getzo, Ben Tzipora,
Let's get Ben Fega Tzipora.
Ben Fega Tzipora. Anybody else that needs refuah shalema, and please bring those shvuyim, the hostages, back home. Let us not have a war, and if we're going to have it, let's win it before it even gets started. Okay, here we go. We're on the top of Nun Ches Amud Aleph. Let me just enlarge this. One, two, three, four lines from the top towards the end. We're talking again about Rabbi Bana. Bana. Rhymes with banana, but no relation. Rabbi Mana, who we gave several sayings from yesterday and things that he did, obviously was a very interesting Rav. So listen, he taught us about the right way to dress, at least for Talmidei Chachamim, the right way the tablecloth should be on the table, and a lot of interesting things for life. You only kind of expect these lines in the Gemara of thought, but Gemara covers everything. So listen what else he did. This was his night job, I guess, or his day job. Rabbi Yonah Havaka Mitzayin Me'arta. He used to walk around, Rabbanah, by crypts. Crypts are basically what do you call it? Graves that are underground. All graves are underground, but these were way underground. And the typical one we think about is Maras HaMachpelah, right? Because there are Abbas, and Imas were all buried there underground. The Mechaba buried underground. So how do you know above ground where they're buried, where the limits are? If you don't know that, Chas v'shama, Kohen could walk by over the grave, all right? Or someone bringing Taurus could go over and get a mitame. And the Gemara will go into side questions. Did they really have Tumah? This was pre-Matan Torah, the people that were taught. But in general, this was one of the things Rabbanah would do. He would go to all graves of great tzaddikim that he was able to, and he'd mark out with some sort of plaster or whatever he had, some kind of white paint, what the boundaries were, so people knew where to stand and where they couldn't stand. So he marked the boundaries of burial graves so people wouldn't walk inadvertently over them and become tamei from walking over tzaddikim's graves. Again, we'll have questions on that later on, because the Gemara will mention, or I'll mention it right now, the fact that we say non-Jews don't give off tumah from their dead bodies. Only Jews give off tumah. Well, the people we're talking about here were previous to Matan Torah, so technically they weren't Jews yet. All right, because there weren't any Jews yet until Matan Torah. So how could they give off tumah? They were even worried about their graves. There's some interesting concepts here, and it goes into in detail. I don't remember if I read on the side in Tosfos or Rashbam, or we'll come across it. But anyway, so he comes into Maras Machpelah, all right? Kimata Lamarata to Abraham. Who's the first grave he comes to? That of Abraham Avinu. Ashkechera Eved Abraham. And guess what? Standing guard, the security. Who's the security? Who'd I just mention? Mr. Daydreamer. Who'd I say? Eliezer, right? That's what you're going to say. Eliezer. Remember Eliezer? who was, he was sent to go find the daughter, the bride for Abram's daughter. Let me ask you something. What's Eliezer doing around? Rav Banah, this is thousands of years later. Certainly way hundreds of years later. What's Eliezer doing there? What's the answer? Right. Eliezer was one of those people who supposedly went up to heaven alive. So it's not that Rabbanah went back in time. It's not that Eliezer came ahead in time. It's not a miracle, this and that. In that sense, it's Eliezer, according to tradition, was one of about 7 people that went up to heaven alive. All right. And you could look what? How's that work? You want me to tell you? I have no idea how that works. It means that they didn't die, but this isn't talking about like Yaakov Avinu Lomet, that he didn't die. It's talking about they just had a direct route. They didn't have to die, etc. They went straight up to heaven. Eliyahu Navi, famous Elijah the prophet, he went straight up to heaven. All right, and you can look up the rest of the list on Wikipedia, the encyclopedia of the Jewish encyclopedia, or any other source that you would like to use. Okay, anyway, so we go. So he finds there Eliezer standing front of Abraham's entrance to the crypt, Amalei. So Rabbanah says to Eliezer, "My car, Abraham. Hey, what's Abraham doing right now?" So kind of a weird question. Eliezer says to him, "Gani b'chdafa desera v'chamanya bereshe." What does he say? He's lying in the wings or the arms of Sarah, and she's looking at his head. In other words, they're in some sort of intimate or private moment. All right, maybe he's lying down in her lap, and she's combing his hair, grooming his hair, just whatever. It's like, normally you don't tell something like that to a stranger. It's private. All right. It's a total lack of tznius. And who knows what thoughts will go on in someone's mind about what they're doing, this and that. But this is Gan Eden. Even though they're in a place, they're in Gan Eden. They're in Olam Haba. There is no taiva in Olam Haba. There's no desires. Up there, everything is pure. So this situation, although it's described anthropomorphically that Abraham is in Sarah's hands, has no non-PG connotation to it. It's perfectly okay. So Amalei, so Banah said to Eliezer, Zil Amalei Banah Kayababa. So but Rabbanah says again to Eliezer, "Please tell Abraham I'm standing here at the entrance. I'd like permission to come in so that I could measure it correctly, so I could set the boundaries above." So he's like one of these surveyors. That's think of it where you ever see them on the street. They're there and they've got this like telescope, and one guy's over at the end of a block and he holds a pole and they survey things. Nowadays they can do this with laser beams, and it's amazing. Amalei Leul. So Abram said to him, let him enter. All right, made the Yediyah, the Yetzer Bahai Amaleka. Meaning that, look, it's well known, I had mentioned this, that there's no personal desires, nothing's going on here personal, and it's perfectly okay for Rabbanah to enter. Kimatam lemarata dadam arishan. All right, so he comes in, he ends up saying, Abram, Sarah, then Yitzchak, and Rivka, and then Abraham, and Yaakov, and Leah. And now he wants to go to the second part of this duplex. Remember, Maras HaMachpelah is like a duplex, two houses. All right, although the houses are not houses as we think of them here, we think of them as crypts, or we think of them again, they're burial plots. But when you look at a duplex nowadays, especially in Florida, most duplexes is a house on one side and the exact same house on the other side. They're side by side, or one behind the other. All right, you're up in Crown Heights or by the Brownstones in Brooklyn. A duplex is one family's living below, one family's living above. But typically, it's the same dimensions, right? They're just doubled. either behind what's in front or above what's below what's above. All right. Yatsa Basko V'Amra. So as he attempted to enter Adam's crypt, which is number 2, heavenly voice came forth and proclaimed, I love Bosco's, man. Nistakalta bidmus yukni. Wait a minute. You don't have to come look at me because I just did. Because you've already seen Yaakov, and Yaakov is made in Adam Harishon's image. I think I once learned Yaakov was a Gilgal of Adam Harishon. Does that ring a bell? Well, anyway, but the fact was they say that Yaakov looked like Adam. So Adam is saying, you don't have to look at me. All right. In fact, don't look at me. Why? Because I was made B'Tselem Elokim in the image of God. God said, don't look at him. God said, don't look at him. Then don't look at me. All right. And there ain't nobody else there except for Chava. All right. So he's saying, don't look at me. You already have an idea what I look like. All right. Rabbanana replies, he says, Ha be'ina l'tzayinei me'arta. He says, I'm not here because I really want to look at you. I'm here because I want to mark the grave sites above. So I need to ascertain the exact and precise dimensions of where you're buried down here. Again, the heavenly voice, Basko, comes out, Kemidas achitana kach midas hapnimis. Just as the dimensions that you already have from outside, which again either refers to the first set of dimensions he took from Abram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov and their wives, is the same as the inner dimensions, that is the burial area of Adam and Chava. All right, so are the dimensions of the inner crypt. All right. So that first answer I just said is talking about where the duplex is behind. In other words, Rabbanah was thinking, you know what? Maybe Adam's is a little bit wider. All right, and up for others and their wives, it's a little bit narrower. So, or as we'll say now, or if he's thinking about the mandamar of a duplex, usually things that are below in those days, the lower level was built a little larger than the upper level because it gave it more of a footing. So think of a pyramid. A pyramid, lahavdil, is wider below, and then the next layer gets thinner. Think of the Kotel Maravi, the Kaisel. All right, when you look at the Kaisel, all the lower stones are much larger, and then they get smaller as you go up above. And if you go into the tunnels, they're even larger there. So the lower down you go, the larger. So that's why he wanted to measure just in case. All right. That he had the exact dimensions. And according to the one who says that the duplex is one above the other, all right, again, Basko, the heavenly voice responded, just like the upper one that you mentioned, that's the lower one. Okay, so he's now got all the measurements and he can mark it out on the ground. Amar Rabbi Banah. So Rabbanah says, Nistalkalti Bishnei Akevav. So he says, I did get a look at the heels of Adam. So Adam Harishon's lying in his grave. And again, if he's coming towards him, and then he didn't get very far according to the story we just said, all right, at least he would have seen the heels of his feet. And if you imagine just the heels of your feet, the heels look like two round balls facing you, like two orbs. Also, Adam didn't have shoes. All right. He spent over 900 years working the land. What was the dirtiest part for sure of Adam? The dirtiest part had to be the heels of his feet because it was the lowest part. How low can you go into the ground? All right. And he says when he looked at those heels, they looked like the orbs of the sun. So Adam's, even the dirtiest part of his feet looked like the brightest lights possible. Now, wasn't dirty. Now, You can ask a question on this. Didn't Hashem say, from dust you cometh, to dust you goeth? All right. How could he see or heals the bones? All right. Wasn't Adam should have been dust. In fact, this whole story. Okay. So Hillel's answering, we have a thing, tradition that tzaddikim, what do you mean they don't go back? They don't decompose, but they still have to become dust. Hashem doesn't go back in his word. Hashem said, from dust you come, dust you go. So what happens, they're buried in a certain eventually it gets decomposed. However, the tzaddikim, we believe, they stay non-decomposed, and then before Tchias HaMesim, they'll turn to dust for a moment, and then they'll come back alive again as a real in a real body. And I mentioned this before, but I have a great grandmother on my maternal side, mama's side, that was killed by the Nazis, in Poland, and years later, many years later, man, it was maybe 50 years later, something like that, 30 years later, whatever. I met a man, he had to be close to 90 in Texas, who was from the same town in Poland, and he remembered my great grandmother, and he said at that time they just took all the Jews they wanted to it into the center of town, and they just murdered them all right there on the spot, and then they buried them in a mass grave. And he said to cover the spot, the goyim in that town, they made it into a pig market. I mean, this is really horrible and disgusting. So the area where all these Yiddish and neshamas were buried was after the war. Thank you, Hashem. Many people survived. All right, the people from that town, including this man, went back to the town. They wanted to dig up the graves and give the people they could identify appropriate burials. And to make a long story short, he said they cleaned it out of the pig market. They dug up the mass grave. All right, now it's right. Thank you. All right. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu shekol nidbarol. Thank you, Moshe Chaim. I did need the water. And this man told me when he dug up my great grandmother, it said it looked like she hadn't died for a minute, that she still looked as if she was alive, and she was known to be quite a tzaddikas. So I mean, that's the closest I can come to a first-hand story about seeing people like this. Anyway, the Gemara is going to continue about the look of these tzaddikim and comparisons. Now, I don't know if we're talking about physically here, or because when we say somebody is beautiful, we talk about beauty differently. We don't talk about skin deep beauty. We talk about, emissa beauty. In other words, what you see is through and through. This is an Erle Chayid. This is a woman who's tzniistic. This is a person who's Shomrei Torah mitzvahs. What you see is what you get. The real level of the tzaddikim. Like we don't even come close to the previous generations. So listen to this. Hakol b'fnei Sarah, the radiance of any other person compared to Sarah, they're like a monkey. All right? Now we know how beautiful Sarah is. They say when Sarah was 99 years old, or whatever she looked like when she was 23 or something like that, or 20, right? When it says that. Yeah. Okay, good, righteousness. But I'm saying that we compare the beauty, if she's an old lady, to being a young woman. All right? So here we're saying that everyone compared to Sarah, meaning women, they look like monkeys compared. Sarah b'fnei Chava. How does Sarah compare to Chava, Emmanuel? Sarah is like a monkey compared to Chava. Get a level of how great Sarah was. Chava compared to Adam, Kikaf b'fnei Adam. She was like a monkey compared to her husband, Adam. All right. Kaf Pnei Adam. All right. And Kaf Pnei Adam. Okay. Adam Bifnei Shechina. How would you compare Adam to the Shechina? Remember, the Shechina, Hashem made him B'Tselem Elokim in his own image. All right. Guess what? He still looked like a monkey compared to God. And we don't even know what God looks like except from the back. Pair of tefillin nuts. All right. Kafnei Adam. All right. Uh, so he looks like a monkey in comparison to that of a human being. Wait. Wait, to that of Shechina, Kaf Bifnei Adam, is like that of a monkey in comparison to that of a human being. I'm not sure how that comes out in English. Just read me what it says there.
The radiance of the continents of Adam in comparison to that of the Shechina
Yeah.
is like that of a monkey in comparison to that of a human being.
Oh, I got. So it's saying that a monkey compared to a human being is that's the analogy of Hashem. Excuse me, Adam compared to. Pay no attention to the peanut gallery. Adam bifnei compared to Hashem. Adam compared to Hashem is like monkeys compared to man. Right. Shifrei the Rav Kahana. Now let's go to Rav Kahana. His beauty, Shifrei the Rav, was a resemblance of that of Rav, Shifrei the Rav. And the beauty of Rav, main Shifrei the Rabbi Abahu, was a resemblance or semblance of the beauty. Again, not as much, but somewhat like that of Rabbi Abahu. Shifrei de Rabbi Abahu, Shifrei of Rabbi Abahu, Mi'ain Shifrei de Yaakov Avinu. And he was like that of Yaakov Avinu. All right. So you see again how the later generations. Well, they're giving examples here. We didn't have to go through every single rabbi. All right. No, and Rabbi Yochanan's beauty. Are you talking about with Reish Lakish? Who are you talking? What do you mean? Yeah. Okay. But I'm saying, but that happened to be physical beauty. We're talking about here more than just physical beauty. All right. That's how I start. We're talking about, in and out. Because to just tell us about beauty, I'm not sure that the Gemara will do all this just to describe, the Miss America beauty pageant, in Doral, Florida or something. Okay. Meaning Shifrei Yaakov Avinu was a semblance of the beauty of our forefather Yaakov. Shifrei Yaakov Avinu and Yaakov, meaning Shifrei the Adam Arishan. And that's how we started at the beginning, was like Adam Arishan. So why did maybe you go through all this? Because we earlier quoted Adam Arishan saying, don't get any closer. Stop. All right. You already know what I look like. How do you know what he looked like? Because he had been by Yaakov. But even if he hadn't been by Yaakov, he knows all these other people that you go down the generation that this looks like this. But again, he was going there to do the measurement. That's what he was going for, not necessary to look at the body. The Gemara recounts another incident involving burial crypts. So now that we're on the telling stories about burial crypts, all right, which again are caves that are underground. Listen to this wild story. Hahu Amgusha. All right, there's a certain magician. All right, he's a necro. What do you call it? Necromancer. Thank you. All right. So he's a guy who goes after dead people to do whatever he needs to do. This guy, not giving a name at the moment, all right, to do kishuf, to do magic. He go and dig up corpses. Now, why did he do that? He did it to steal their clothes. Why did he steal their clothes? Either he used it for some sort of black magic, or he was a phony baloney. I mean, I don't really know. Maybe he'd say, "I'm bringing them from the grave," who step out and then come back in the last clothes they had and freak out whoever was there, because he would be looking in the dark like that person wearing their clothes. Although if they were wearing takrichim, they all look alike. So I don't really know what's going on. But to do his black magic, supposedly he stole clothes, right? When he reached the crypt, the Kimata Arta, the Rav Tuvi Bar Matna, when he reached the crypt of Rav Tuvia Bar Masna, all right, and he attempted to take the clothes off. Tafsei B'diknei, the corpse went and seized him by the beard. Can you imagine how freaky that would have been? The corpse got up and went like this and grabbed his beard. All right. And he wouldn't let go. He wouldn't let go of this, magic magician guy. All right. Us Abaye. So Abaye had to come along, who happened to be friends, and so knew this magician. All right. And he came to the crypt and he said to Rav Tuvia's corpse, B'matusa minach shabek, I beg you, let go of this guy. All right. So you know what? He let go of him. The following year, Hadahasa, guess what? This magician didn't learn. He comes back again and he attempts to take the claw. He didn't get it off Rav Tuvia the first time. Rav Tuvia, he's going to try again this time. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Guess what? It wasn't a good choice. What? Family share. So what I say? All right. Tough say bidik. What's the Goyish song? Try again. That's a say. Tough say bidikne. All right. The corpse seized him by his beard once more. So he pulled the same shtick. Rav Tuvi gets up, grabs him, and says, "You're not going anywhere. You're not touching my clothes." All right. And he wouldn't release him. Ad aite maspera begaze ledikne, until his friend Abaye showed up. And guess what? This time Abaye maybe he didn't even try, but he didn't beg Rav Tuvi to let go of him. He just came with a pair of scissors and they cut the beard off of this guy so that he would take off and lose his beard. And at the same time, that would be embarrassing because people would see all of a sudden this guy lost half his beard and they'd say, "Well, where were you? Something must have gone on." The Gemara returns to incidents involving Rav Bana'ah. So as long as we're learning so far half a page of stories about Rav Bana'ah, and they're very interesting, let's learn another one. There's a certain man who said on his deathbeds to his son, Chavita de Afra Lachad Bari, I'm bequeathing a keg of earth to one of my sons. Chavita de Garme, the Chabre, a keg of bones to one of my sons. And Chavita de Udra Chabre, and a keg of some sort of textiles, whether it was cotton or feathers or whatever. There's many interpretations I came across. All right. The point is, it wasn't animal, it wasn't land, all right? It was some sort of things related to textiles, all right? To one of the sons. Nobody understood what that meant. The sons had no idea what he was talking about. So they didn't know how to divide their father's estate, all right? Because there were no kegs there, all right? What does that mean? You worse than the kids. I'm going to make you sit over there. All right. And they went in front of Rabbana and they say they want to know, what's going on. Amalahu, Rabbana said to them, he says, tell me some. Isla Chawara, did your father have land? So he says, yes. He says, Amarlo, yes. Isla Chayvasa, He says, did your father have livestock? And they say, yeah, and Islo Bistarke, did your father have quilts and bedding and stuff like that in the house? They go, hey, yes. Ah, he says, Hachi, then this is what it all means. Hachi Kamalachu, he said that the life, the one he said, you get the earth, you're getting his land. The one he said, you get the bones, you're getting his livestock. And the one he said, you get the keg of cotton or feathers or whatever, you get all the land, real estate. That was a barrel of dirt. All right. So that's what he was giving it in codes, and that's what he meant. But again, Rabbanah, who was so smart, he could figure out these codes, and the first code master. All right. And okay, and he explained what it was. Another story. Why are we hearing that story? Because we're into stories that involve Rabbanah, because it's kind of cool stories, right? Ahu Gavra, all right? There was a certain man, this is wild. The Shamu, the Bise, the Kamras Levarte. He overheard his wife talking to his daughter. I'll keep this PG, all right? Amar Leitz Niusa Bisura. She says, look, you do a lot of things that are usher. She says, if you're going to do those things, don't flaunt them. Don't go out in public and let everybody know about your dirty laundry, the things, the averis that you do. At least do it secretly. And to prove it, the mother says to the daughter, she goes, look, I have 10 sons. But only one of them belongs to your father. Like mother, like daughter. This mother's admitting that 9 of her sons came from other men.
There's a lesson behind it.
Yes. What's the lesson?
She was not
That,
public.
well, that's what she wants the teacher to do. Yeah, but the other lesson to be learned is if you're doing the wrong thing, your children might learn from you one way or another, all right, and end up doing the same thing. Kishchiv, when her father was dying, remember the father heard this. So the father says, oh my God, I thought I had 10 sons. I only have 1 son. But he didn't want to embarrass the sons. He didn't want to embarrass, he could have, but he didn't want to embarrass someone barabim, because that's also. So he just shweigt still. He just kept quiet. But on his deathbed, he said, I leave everything I own only to 1 son. All right. But none of the sons knew, and the father died. Who was to get the inheritance? Which one it was? So they had to find the Rabbi Manah. So the sage at that time who knew all the answers to the riddles was, guess who? You're just truly Rabbanah. So they come to Rabbanah, and what does he say? Look how smart he is. He doesn't want to give away the story. All right. He doesn't want to embarrass the mother. He doesn't want to embarrass the sons, who he's now saying all those sons are basically what's the word? Blocking mamzerim. All right, if they're from illicit marriages, whatever they certainly weren't his son. So he says, Amalahu. He says, Zilu chavutu kivra davuchan. He says to all the sons, all of you, go to your father's grave, take a stick or whatever, bang on the grave, and ask him which son is supposed to get your inheritance. All right? Maybe he'll wake up. Maybe one of you will grab your beard and say it's you. Maybe, I don't know what he's going to do. Maybe he'll come to someone in the dream and say, or to everyone in the dream and say it all goes to this one person. But maybe we'll find out the answer. Adekoi umagale lachu lahei minacho shavka. So until he gives you an answer, Azlu kulo. So they all went, and they all did what he suggested. Hahu divrei havalo azo, except for the legitimate son. He would not bang on his father's grave because he had within him the menschlichkeit and the respect for his father. He just knew it to not bang on the grave. But the other guys, they didn't have that because they came from someone else. So they had to try to, no, they didn't know that, but their genetic makeup spiritually was that of Yetzer of give me, not Yetzer Tov, I want to give out, not of a Yid that follows Torah mitzvahs and says Kaveh Tzadich V'Yashimecha. So the real son wouldn't do it. All right, and guess what? Azlo Achlo Kortze Be Malka. All right. So that's what happened. And that's how they found out. Then Rav Kana said, you that didn't bang on the grave, you're the one who should get it. You want to say something?
Supposed to inquire from the dead.
Yeah, that's a good question. Hillel says we're not supposed to inquire from the dead. Yeah, go ask Rav Bana why he did it. This whole story has to do with things that had to do with dead people. So, and remember we learned. We learned years ago about the guy who went to sleep, got kicked out of his house, went to sleep and heard two girls talking about let's fly around and go see what's happening. One says I'm stuck in the reeds, and then he finds out the weather report for knows how to make money on futures of grain. I mean, there's a lot of these stories. What we're not supposed to do is right. What happened back then, maybe that's where we're learning it from. But anyway, let's go weiter. All right. So these guys, these 9 sons, they're upset. Why are they upset? Because they're missing out on on the stuff. So they want to get even Rabbanah. So they came to the king and they say, if a Gavra Chad bi Yehudei, there's this one Jew in amongst the Jews. This sounds so similar to the story of Purim. The Kamapik Mamona Miinshe, who takes money from people. What? Purim, yeah. Think about it, like when they want to go and when Haman wants to send Mordechai to the gallows. All right, they go and they're mouthing him. All right, so they're saying that there's a Jew out there, one man amongst the Jews who wants to take money away from people. All right, below Saadeh, below Mite. He doesn't have Adim, he doesn't have testimony, he doesn't have proof. So the king agents brought Rav Bernard to him and they put him in jail. This sounds like the story of Yosef. All right, and they threw Yosef in jail. All right, Azla Devisu. So Rav Bernard, behind every great man, there's even a greater woman. So Rav Bernard's wife, she has to figure out a way how to get her husband out of jail. Listen what she does. She comes in front of the king's court. All right, you had a problem. You came. Yes, you came to. They put him in jail. Because then, if you were paying attention, the 9 sons just maligned him. No, the one son was happy. He had his money. The other 9 sons, they went. Okay, thank you. All right. Just listen. Okay, yes, but not only listen, but pay attention. Okay. All right, so she comes, and this is her plan. She's going to give a case to the king's court, to the judges there, that they're not going to be able to solve. What did she say? Amrlahu, Abdechad Havali. I happen to have a slave. Paskil Reshe. All right, people came along and they cut off his head. Upastu Lamashke, and they stripped him of his skin. V'yachlu bisere, and they ate his flesh. It's a wild story she's making up. The Kamalo Maya. And then they filled up, they drew water, and with the skin, they made one of these flasks. In those days were made out of hides that they carry wine and water on and this and that, or canteen. And and they would put the water in it and they'd give all their students to drink from it. And they never paid me a penny for my slave. It's funny. The story's wild because you expect at the end that she's going to say to the king, these are barbarians. Look what they've done. They all deserve the death penalty. She says, I never got paid for my slave. So it's just wild. guess what? The king's court men, all right, in other words, the judges, they had no idea what to do with this story. All right. Yolede Maika Amrlu. They said, we have no idea what she's saying to us. So Amri Nese Lachakime Yehuda. You know what? Now it sounds like Yosef. I heard we have this very wise man, Bana, from the Jews. He knows how to solve all riddles, and he's in jail. Right? Doesn't it sound like Yosef? Let's take him out of jail and ask him. They didn't even realize, I guess, initially that this was his wife. So Rabbi Bana, what? They didn't. No. So they summoned Rabbi Bana, and they repeated to him the story. So he says, no, you don't understand. She was talking to you about a skin bottle from an animal. In other words, she said that she had a goat, and someone came along and they shechted the goat. They chopped the head off. All right, and they skinned the goat, and then they ate the meat because that's what you do with the meat of an animal. All right. And then they went and they took the hide and they made it into a flask and they filled the flask with water and they drank from it, but they never paid me even bitrei zuze, 2 bits for my chad gadya. I never got anything out of this. This is, this wasn't fair. All right, hold on a moment. Drop of water. Next time, if you can bring me water, a larger cup. Yes, all right. All right. So the king's court realized he's so smart. This is a long page here. We'll have to make up for it tomorrow. He says, since you are so smart, let him sit at the entrance to the king's courtyard and let him render judgment. So he now got appointed. It's like Mordechai, back to or Yosef, like the viceroy. I mean, the non-Jewish kings recognized the wisdom of these Jewish sages, and then they made them, like second in charge. Or Rambam, who was up there to the Sultan, I mean, they ended up in the king's court. Chazer the Havak Silba Avula, and he saw while we were sitting there, he noticed, if you ever go in court buildings or certain government buildings, you see these engravings on the wall, and they're usually lines of wisdom, justice is blind, whatever. This is things. It's supposed to be blind. All right. Says on the Torah. They put up stuff people should learn from it. All right. So he looks up there and he sees what it says, Kodayan, the Mikra Ladin, says any judge who's summoned to a monetary claim, Lo Shmei Dayan, he shouldn't even be called a judge. He says, what are you talking about? How are you ever going to solve any monetary claims if you're saying that every time someone comes up in front of a judge for a monetary claim, we're going to say he's not a judge? Well, then anybody who's guilty, I don't want to pay Shmuel, Shimon doesn't want to pay Reuven back the money that he borrowed. So on the way to the court, he says, judge, you're going to have to decide about money. Disqualified. All right, that's what the ruling said. So Rabbanah says, and he's saying that Ana Inish Me'ama, a man will come from the street, top of Nun Ches Hamid Beis, Umazmin Ladina, when he's summoned to court, Pasle is going to puzzle the judge. Ella. So he says, what should it mean? Dayan de Mikre Ladin, any judge who's summoned to court, Umafkein Mina Mamona Bedin, and the court extracts money from the judge, meaning that it proves that the judge was guilty. He took a bribe. He himself wasn't honest. He says, Lav Shmei Dayan, that person shouldn't be a judge. So he added extra to the sentence to explain what the sentence really should mean in truth. The judges accepted Rabbanah's recommendation, Kasfu Haki, and this is what they said, Berem Sabe, the Yehude Amro. However, the wise elders of the Jews say this is what they added in, Kodayan de Mikre Ladin, any judge who's brought to court, Umafki mine mamana bedin, and we extract money from love shmei dayan. It just repeated what he said. Okay. Let's go a little bit weiter because we're behind. Chazi dechsiv. All right, he saw another sentence that was written. He says, Baruch kol mosa anadam. He says, at the head of all death, I am blood. That sounds like it's saying that blood is the cause of all death. Baruch kol chaya anachama. And at the head of all life, I'm wine. So wine is the cause of life, and blood is the cause of death. So it says, Elam yata nefel miigra umis. So Rabbana, he objected it. He says, you mean if a guy falls from a roof or falls off a tree and dies, bangs his head, all the blood goes out of him. Now he's exsanguinated. He has no blood. You're going to say the cause of his death was he had too much blood? Because that's what the sentence says. Blood is the cause of death. Unenafa midlek mace rest the Kasle and blood killed him. He says, Man the darke lamemes, or a guy that's about to die, he's so sick, and you go and all of a sudden you get him drunk. All right, you give him so much wine. If I bring in the room of a guy on his deathbed and he's gonna live, this guy's about to die. Guess what? This statement makes no sense. This is what it should say. Beres komarin anadam. At the head of all illness, am I blood? Beres ko asna anachamar. At the head of all cures, am I wine? All right. So what that's really saying is that in the old days, he used to call septic shock, like when people get a blood infection, they used to call blood poisoning. So he's saying everything that starts in general with a sickness starts in the blood, whether it's the red blood cells, the white blood cells, the germs that's in the blood. So the beginning of death starts with something in the blood. So even the guy who fell off the tree, he started to lose his blood. It's not that excess blood. You see, in those days, how did they treat illness? They did bloodletting. They put leeches to suck out the blood and this and that, bunkers to suck out the plasma or fluid. They thought excess blood was the cause of death. So that's what caused this, probably the wrong saying to be put up. But he shows it all right. And wine, even nowadays, is societies that recommend, medical societies that recommend that a man can drink 2 drinks a night and he will live long. It'll give long life, and a woman can drink 1 drink. It's not a medical recommendation from a doctor, but if that's all you're going to drink, all right, because the problem is many people start with 2, have 3, 4, 5. All right. If you want me to go quicker, because we're almost time for minyan, then don't interrupt so much for the last hour. Remember that for tomorrow when I try and catch up. I'm trying to at least finish more. So Kosfil Haki, so they went and they changed the sentence. Bram Sabe, Yehuda Amre, the elder of the wisest of the Jews, to talk about Barana, Baras Komarin on Adam, at the head of all illnesses, and my blood, Baras Kowasyan on the Chamor, and the head of all curses, and my wine, Basa Dilei Chamor. And if there's a place where there's no wine, if you're in a place where you can't do an ounce of prevention, which is better than a pound of cure, where you can't have 2 drinks a day, all right, to live longer, this, that, and you do get sick, well, then you're going to go, Taman Mitbar, Saman, and then you go and you get herbs, or basically you need medicines. Okay, we'll stop here. We're in the middle of, wait, the 2 lines from the Mishnah. Ksiv apitcha de putkaya, all right? The following was inscribed in the entrance of a place called Kaputkaya, Anpak, Anbag, Antal. All right, just think of it as pounds, ounces, and liters or milliliters. All right, basically, it was a certain amount in different measurements that all was the same. All right, Vezo Antal, what's an Antal? Zeravias Shel Torah. It's a Revius of Torah. When we say a Revius of Yayin, like by Pesach, all right, because it says we're Dalit Kosus in the Torah, all right, so that's the Revius of Torah. All right, we're up to the Mishnah in the middle of Lamed Ches. Tomorrow we'll try and go a little bit quicker to catch up. All right, have a great day. No, are we learning tonight? No, because I need some time to prepare for tomorrow. So tonight it's Thursday already. And I still have to recover from Peretz's wedding last night. His son Yosef. Please remember to press leave on the way out. Thank you. Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you. Have
See
a good
ya.
day. Call
Thank you.
too.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye bye. See ya,
Bye.
Moshe, Chaim, everyone.
Thank you, Rennie.
See you, Naftali.